Hello and welcome to today's episode of Focus Atlanta. I am your host, Keisha Lanceman. Thanks so much for tuning in with us this weekend. In this week's episode, we'll discuss the importance of a mental health check-in. We'll get some tips to help you enjoy the summer. USDA warns of the hidden risk of invasive pests lurking in your next move. We'll begin learning to recognize the early signs of perimenopause. I'm here with Dr. Samina Rahman. You know, it's a confusing time for women. So can we start at the beginning? What is the, general definition of perimenopause?
Yeah, perimenopause is literally the time leading up to menopause, which is really defined as your final menstrual period. And that's really a retrospective diagnosis if you think about it. It's 12 months without the menstruation at the time of, midlife.
And so, can we be better prepared? Are there things that we can do to be better prepared for what our body is about to experience?
100%. And I think, one of the most confusing parts of like perimenopause in general and menopause is that we don't have like, an algorithmic lab definition for it, right? Like I can't just draw a lab and say, for some people who don't menstruate for one reason or another, because of a hysterectomy or, they're an IUD that doesn't allow them to menstruate, then lab work is kind of useful to kind of track and see what's happening. But for the majority of women, like we need to know your symptoms. And so we have to have a reliable way of symptom tracking. I'm an advisor for Flow, and we have a great app with Flow. We have a perimenopause mode, there's a symptom tracker, there's a menopause timeline. Because realistically, there's been studies that Flow has done with different groups that show that women are feel more prepared for puberty than they do for perimenopause.
And to your point, can we talk a little bit about why some of these symptoms are so misunderstood or not diagnosed or misdiagnosed?
Yeah, and there's so many reasons for that. I think number one is that, we have hormone receptors for estrogen and testosterone really all over our body, right? Estrogen receptors from head to toe. So when you think about what's happening in perimenopause, it's a real time of estrogen fluctuation and progesterone decreasing. So if you have high estrogen 1 month and low estrogen 1 month, it's that delta from high to low that is causing the chaos. And so what we see is a lot of times, of course, we think, okay, menstrual cycle changes can happen, but you're at midlife where all things are happening at once, right? You might be at the pinnacle of your career. You might be raising kids. We know that, the average 45-year-old now has toddlers, like we know women are having pregnancies later in life. You might also be taking care of elderly parents, right? The sandwich generation is real. And you compound that with a little bit of like hormonal chaos and it becomes very confusing, right? Like, why am I not sleeping? Why is my mood, why am I so angry? The irritability and the anger is one of the most common symptoms I see every single day. And sometimes these mood things show up way before the cycle changes. And so some people just come off, we have a term that we use, NFLM, not feeling like myself. I can't figure it out, but I'm not feeling like myself. And there's studies that show that that is one of the most common presenting symptoms. And then you compound that with a system, a medical system that doesn't allow for these conversations. A 10-minute visit? No way. Like you cannot have a good conversation. And so that's why like tracking your symptoms with something like Flow is really beneficial because you have data points, right? I can just email these data points or show, this was my perimenopause score. This is what I'm tracking with my cycle. This is what it says happens at this phase of my cycle. And like, maybe you'll get taken. I mean, unfortunately, women still get dismissed and they're not taken seriously because of our historic systemic racism and sexism that exists in our system, right? So
Absolutely.
like maybe I have data points to show you, like, do you believe me now? Do you
Yeah,
know what I'm saying? Like, I
absolutely.
think that's really important.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. We've had the app addressed up there and the website addressed for all of our ladies so that we can get some assistance in regulating our bodies during this time. Thanks so much for coming on the show. It was good to meet you.
Thank you, Keisha, for having me. And I just want all the listeners to know that, like, you're really in charge of your body. You can advocate for yourself. If knowing what's happening with yourself is your greatest gift, because as women, we're caretakers, we're doing everything for everybody, and we have to take care of ourselves first. So just please remember that your health is important and you need to take charge of it because no one's coming to save us.
I love it. I can't close it out any better than that. All right, Dr. You've
Thanks
heard
so
from
much.
Dr. Rahman. Thank you for taking time to listen to this segment of Focus Atlanta. We hope that you've gotten some education. Go download the app, learn more, figure out how you can navigate this period in your life. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to this segment of Focus Atlanta. We'll be right back with more.